On our pay-in product, I can settle to my merchants all around the globe super efficiently. On our pay-out product, where we need to pay all these people around the world, I can use their rails, right? They have their XRP ledger, they have a blockchain. And so if I wanted to, I have a couple of products coming up that need to store things directly on the blockchain. I could potentially use them for that. So there's a lot of synergies between our two companies where they provide the technology that we need.
This content is brought to you by Uphold, which is a great crypto platform that I've been using since 2018. Uphold has all the top cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and all the altcoins. In fact, they have 260 plus cryptocurrencies on their platform. You can also trade precious metals, stablecoins, and 37 fiat currencies. In addition, they are available in over 150 countries. And this platform is fully reserved. They do audits, so you can trust that your funds are safe. No commingling, no lending out your funds. If you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Peter Jensen, who is the CEO of Rocketfuel Payment Solutions. Peter, it is great to have you on.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited. I listen to your podcasts almost every morning.
Thank you, Peter. And I'm excited to talk to you about Rocketfuel and all the great things you're doing in helping merchants to accept cryptocurrencies and much more. But let's start with your background. Tell us where you're from and as well as your professional background.
Yes, I'm from Denmark originally. I grew up there and started my professional career with a small startup at that time called Oracle. Moved to Silicon Valley, and I've been here for ever since. So I started out in the software world, Oracle, Symantec, and VMware, some of the now bigger companies. Then they were small. But then I moved to the other side, and I thought I had to try the startups world. So the past 15, 20 years, I've been doing startups. This is my sixth startup.
Wow.
The other ones, I've sold them to IBM and Cisco, and they've always been within infrastructure, software infrastructure, really using technology to make existing processes more efficient, cheaper, better, faster, whatever.
That's incredible, Peter. I mean, it sounds like you are a tech OG. I mean, Oracle, and then you went to Silicon Valley, essentially. I did a lot of entrepreneurship. That's amazing. I feel like there's a whole other conversation we could have in this interview about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway I've gotten here, and what I get excited about is, and this is also why I'm excited about the current technology with crypto and blockchain is, and I've seen it happen so many times. If you look at the biggest successes here in Silicon Valley and around the world, but they are mostly driven out of Silicon Valley, it is when you have an old-fashioned, inefficient industry. You have a large market in that industry, and then you have a new technology that comes up that we as startups can use to fix all the problems that are there, right? That is, if you look back, Uber and Lyft, right? It's a perfect example. They looked at an old industry that had been doing things the same way for many years because there was no better way, and suddenly the mobile phone had a GPS unit in it. And they just took that technology and applied it to the problem and made it more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. And boy, crypto and blockchain certainly disruptive. And you have some of the banks just yesterday, Jamie Dimon complaining about it, right? Disruptions at their door.
Well, that's exactly it, right? I mean, that is why I'm super excited about Rocketfuel and payments and Bitcoin and crypto, because again, to me, it's just another technology. It's infrastructure. So we'll get into what we do and all that, but we're infrastructure. So the way I look at this is just technology that allows us to make the efficient processes more efficient, better, faster, cheaper, more secure, and better for the end user. Look at the convenience we got with Apple Pay and Google Pay. As a consumer, that's great. And there's also security and all that. It's just infrastructure that makes our daily lives easier and better.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything that makes things easier and more efficient will always win. Um, I would love to ask you about entrepreneurship a bit because you've started so many companies and successfully sold them. Uh, you know, what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur, looking to start a business, whether it be in crypto or some other industry?
Well, I would start with what I just said. Find a large industry uh, that has a lot of problems, and then apply a new technology to fix those problems. It sounds like business school 101, but that is, if you look at the big successes. Sometimes I see people get enamored about a new technology and all the cool things you could do with it. And NFT is an example of it, where I think it was a technology looking for a problem. There's a lot of cool stuff you could do, but it has to solve a problem for someone. It has to add value. And if it doesn't, it's hard to sell. And so find a vertical, find some problems, validate it with the customer, figure out how you can solve it technically. And then the next thing is, once you're, develop something really fast and go out and try to sell it. Because once you start selling it, you will learn so much. Do not wait too long, right? Get out there, figure out what you got wrong. Not all assumptions are going to be correct. So you better figure it out earlier rather than later, and make adjustments.
Great advice. So I have to ask, what was your first encounter with Bitcoin and crypto, and what was the aha moment for you?
Yeah, I played around a little bit with crypto, bought some at Coinbase, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I did it for the same reason many people did it in the early days, which is they looked at crypto as an asset, where you buy Bitcoin or whatever you bought and you hope that it would go up. Nothing wrong with that. That's one use case for crypto. And then I had looked at it that way. And then when I was introduced to Rocketfuel and I learned more about the payment space, I'm like, well, hang on. This is a technology, and I learned more about blockchain technology underneath crypto. So the underlying technology is blockchain, and crypto is just a use case on top of that, one of many. Just like in the early days of the internet was the technology on which you could build all these applications, whether it was a browser or an email client. And later on, you built SaaS solutions, you built dating apps, you built social media, all of that stuff that we couldn't imagine at that time. And I'm like, hang on, now I understood what blockchain could do, because there was someone who once explained it to me, and that I got it. They said the internet allowed us to store, validate, and move data fast. That's really what it allowed us to do. And what blockchain does, it takes it one step further and says, now it's not data, it's assets that you can store, validate, and move. I'm like, because all of these assets, whether they are driver's licenses or money or whatever it is, and it's a big, complex, inefficient process. Anyone who's bought a house, they know the amount of paperwork and this and that and intermediaries. It's crazy. And then I thought, when I met Rocketfuel and I learned more about the payment industry, then I said, and that again, what triggered me was Uber and Lyft. They use the mobile phone to move people from A to B in a more efficient way. They use technology to make that process more efficient. And then I thought about, when we move money, we all move money, not just people, businesses.
Right.
Businesses move money. They pay each other across borders and all of that. And if you think about the whole financial infrastructure and how complicated it is and how old it is, I mean, just on the consumer side, credit cards were invented before the internet. I don't know if you realize that. Before the internet, that's when we had the credit cards. No wonder it's not efficient. No wonder they had to add a magnetic stripe, a chip, a CVC code. I mean, why did they do all that if it was so perfect? No, because it wasn't perfect. And we still pay 3, 4, 5%. And there's still fraud. And there's still chargebacks. And that's just on the consumer side. I don't know if anyone has tried, or if you've tried to move like $100,000 from the US to Singapore using the banking system. it is not easy. We had to move $400,000 from our subsidiary in Europe over here. It took a month. It's crazy. And by the way, that is why Jamie Dimon and the established banks are scared of this technology, because they do not want to be the next yellow cab.
Yeah.
Because I know, I look at my transactions. I think we've done 450,000 payment transactions this year, and a lot of them between businesses, and they go outside the banking system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's lost revenue for them, lost control, lost everything. So I don't blame him for not liking it, right? And especially if he can't move fast enough. And we're just using him as an example, but it's the entire financial industry, because they're old-fashioned. They have a lot of legacy software. It's not easy to maintain all that legacy software. Just look at, I mean, there's mainframe still and COBOL. It's just a mess when you have established old businesses and technologies and processes. And even if they want to move it, they can't.
Yeah. And they've made so much money off of it, their fees, right? So this would cut their margins big time. It's putting a lot of their monopoly out of business, essentially. So because it's
control and stronghold on the market. You're totally right.
Yeah. So talk about Rocketfuel. Tell us about the history of it and the mission and the services you provide.
Yeah, the background is really that my co-founder and the original founder of the company, he owns a couple of payment service providers, and that really means that he processes credit cards for hundreds of merchants. Mm. And he went to a couple of crypto conferences and said, wow, I am going to be the new yellow cab. This is going to be the future. He gets it. But it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, we didn't move from brick and mortar to online trading from one day to the other just because Jeff Bezos thought we would, right? It takes time. And so he's like, I'm gonna keep running my business. And he asked me if I could start this business. So that's how I got started. The mission for our company is really that we want to make moving money from A to B more efficiently, more secure, more transparent, cheaper, and all of that. We just want to, once again, apply technology to an existing process that has a lot of inefficiencies to the benefit of consumers and businesses and everyone, right? That's the mission. And so for that, we've developed an integrated product suite with 4 different products. So we just keep adding products, use cases, if you will. As I told you, blockchain is just a technology on which we can build new use cases. So we just take one problem at a time and we develop a software module for that. And so the first one we did was e-commerce pay-in, where a merchant can accept payment in crypto and or ACH here in the US, or they can send invoices. That's one product. The next one was that we call that pay-in, where the merchant receives money. The next thing is pay out. A lot of businesses think the gig economy with Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and Upwork and all those, they need to pay a lot of money all around the world every week. Right. And more of these gig economy workers are saying, I don't want to deal with the banks. It takes forever. And sometimes it gets there. Sometimes it doesn't. I already have crypto on my phone. Can you just send it to me? And I have it 5 minutes later because I have to pay rent. So that's the second product. We have a B2B cross-border product that allows some of our bigger customers to send millions across the border. And then we have a new blockchain-based gift card. You can call it an NFT, if you will. So those are the 4 products we have in the market right now. We're constantly expanding.
That's fascinating. I'm very curious about the NFT gift card. Can you tell us more about that and how that works?
Yeah, I mean, as you probably know, the gift card industry is huge and profitable and all of that. But again, it's old-fashioned and it's not efficient with going down to Safeway with a card and all this stuff, right? Why not make that electronic just like everything else? So with our NFT-based or blockchain-based gift card, a merchant can go in, a shopper can go in and spend, let's say, $100 or $1,000 and buy one of our gift cards. It'll all be or it is all being documented on the blockchain, and then they can use that gift card anywhere in the Rocketfuel ecosystem with all the merchants.
Wow. And are you primarily using, let's say, for certain payments, stable coins or
Ah,
different crypto assets?
yeah. So of course it depends on the four different products. If you look at it from the consumer side, then at the end of the day, we support whatever coin the shopper wants to pay with. By
Right.
the way, that is the mission for all the merchants, right? Why
Mhm.
do they add PayPal and Google Pay and Apple Pay in addition to Visa and Master and American Express? They do that because they want to be able, they never want to turn away a customer. They want to accept whatever they have.
Exactly.
So yeah, so for pay in, it is whatever the customer has. Now, we have a lot of data over time, 450,000 transactions this year. So we know what people are paying with. We definitely see a trend towards stable coins. And if you just take that for a little bit, the future of payments is stablecoin.
Right.
Just think about it. Would you want your salary paid out in Canadian dollars? Say, don't worry about it. It's pretty stable and it probably will go up, but it could go down. No, you wouldn't do that, even though you could pay with it down in the store. You want something that does not fluctuate. And so, and it's not just consumers, it's also businesses, because businesses are not in the business of, most of them are not in the business of foreign or in currency speculation.
Right.
So yeah, so that is clearly we see a trend moving towards stable coins for payments, because we're just moving value from A to B in a more efficient way, and nobody wants to lose money or win money. So for example, on our pay-in product, when our shoppers pay with all sorts of coins, Bitcoin and XRP and Ethereum or whatever, and stable coins, all our merchants, 99% of our merchants say, just settle to me in dollars or euros.
Mm.
It's, and again, people, we in this space, we make it too complicated, or we overthink it. A
Sure.
standard business, they just want, think about it. If you are a restaurant, or if you are a jeweler, and you are going to sell a $20,000 Rolex watch, and a British person comes in, that British person only has British pounds, right?
Mhm.
But the merchant, they just want the US dollars next day from Visa and MasterCard. They
Right.
don't care if he has dollars or Chinese yuan or whatever. They just want that. And these coins are just additional currencies. And so instead of accepting all the fiat currencies, they're now accepting fiat plus some more. But at the end of the day, they just want dollars into their bank account. That was a long answer.
No, that absolutely makes sense. I mean, you're a business, you've got operating costs, right? You need money to keep moving, and you don't need anything to be sitting necessarily. Yes, you have your savings and so forth, but to operate the business, you need that liquidity, you need the money, you got to pay for your whatever and pay people and all that. So that absolutely makes sense.
But I would say this though. So everybody, they do not want volatility. So most of them want US dollars. However, we are
Right.
also seeing a trend that more and more are saying, can you just settle in stable coins like USDC, USDT, or PayPal's, right? And that is because they have, once they get their money, and we have four clients. We have lots of clients. We have four that have more than $1 billion in revenue, right?
Mm.
And so they have a need to send money out to some of their partners in stable coins increasingly. And so a lot of them are saying, you know what, just send it to me in stable coins so that I don't have to take the US dollars, fiat dollars that you send me, and then convert it back. So we see more and more, but it's still the minority that want to settle in stable coins. But it will come as they start understanding what the benefits are.
Yeah, an instant settlement of that, right? Versus having to wait days or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. Um, Tell us about the type of merchants you're working with, and if you can name drop, that's fine. If you can't, no worries. And are you working with clients globally?
Yes. So the answer is yes. Actually, most of our revenue, more than 50% of our revenue, is outside the US. And we can come back to, and I'm following your discussions on your podcast, right? But why that is, but it definitely, in my view, I agree with you. It has something to do with the brakes that some organizations in this country have been able to put on this industry. So we just see more and more happening outside, which is unfortunate. But anyway, so more than 50% of our revenue is outside the US. And I mean, so we have four large clients and a lot of small ones. We have one big partner I can mention, that ACI Worldwide. They're one of the biggest processors of credit cards. And again, they just want to be able to offer their partners and their merchants the ability to accept payment with whatever the customer walks in with. So we have an exclusive partnership with them and provide the crypto rails, if you will, for both pay in, pay out, and some other areas there. So that's one partner. We go to market with these partners. We complement their solutions. And then if you ask me, where are the sweet spots right now? Well, I look at it from vertical perspective, demographic, and regional. So obviously, any merchant that's selling to a younger audience will have a bigger uptake on crypto. And then there are some regions that just are much more open to crypto. I was in Dubai last month. Clearly, they're moving fast. You take some of the Latin American countries, for example, Argentina, with all their inflation, people learned really fast to convert their local money into stable coins. And then there are other areas in the world, and then there are the verticals, which is really where there's always a sweet spot with a new technology, and it is where the pain is the biggest. And that is in luxury goods, in gaming, gambling, some software companies we have, and we also have regular. I mean, we have an art gallery down in Los Angeles, right? They have some customers there was one customer, he wanted to buy a $75,000 painting and he wanted to pay with Bitcoin.
Wow.
We have but that's in store, but that works fine too.
Yeah, it's incredible. And like you're saying, there's a lot of people in other parts of the world. We're in the United States. There's a lot of luxuries that things are decently efficient, right? But there's a lot of people who are facing a lot of friction and dealing with a lot of economic issues. And like you mentioned, Argentina, hyperinflation, and Venezuela has the same issue. So many of them are flocking. I've been hearing about this to USDC, also putting it in Bitcoin and things that could hold a value. So I'm sure there's going to be more rise in adoption outside the US. I think the US and some of these developed countries will eventually come around, but the adoption is probably going to happen faster outside the US, right?
Yeah, for two reasons. A, there's the whole regulatory framework and legislation. As you know,
sure.
UK, Europe, and some of those countries or regions have, and Middle East as well, have just adopted regulation faster and better. And that helps because if you think about it, the big companies, I don't necessarily blame a large company in the US for hesitating to enter when there's not clear guidelines, or they feel they're not clear guidelines, right? So what happens is in Europe, when the European Union passed their regulation this summer, right? Then suddenly that forces every board of the large companies to at least think about these things. Like, what should we do? Let's start understanding it. They must be serious about it when Christine Lagarde says there's going to be a digital euro, and now we've done all the legislation around it. Okay, this is not just something that people are saying, oh, this is not going to happen. Why would they do all that? And the same thing is going to happen here, hopefully. And then one more thing, the benefit for us in the Western world is efficiency. So the way I look at it is, if you take $1, and how many times does that go around in our society in a year? You get your payment, your salary, then I go buy a flat screen TV. I pay every time the money moves, we pay a fee, right? Mm-hmm. So paying the salary, buying the TV, then Best Buy needs to pay Samsung in Korea, and then Samsung needs to pay their vendors, and then that dollar moves around 2, 3, 4 times, and every single time we pay a fee. And but it's only money, right? So we can get more efficiencies out of it. But if you look at some of the less developed world, all the unbanked,
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have a bank account, then with crypto, you don't need a bank account. And this is also why the banks are a little scared, right? Because if you don't have a bank account and you're sitting in Latin America or China or in India, and by the way, we're talking billions of people who could be potential bank customers. But if they get stablecoin sent to their phone and they can pay with it everywhere, and then you want to tell them that they should have a bank account, they're like, and why should I have that?
Right. And
And
then
that is billions of people who could become banking customers who will not become, or maybe they will become banking customers when they need to buy a house or do something more complex, but not just for getting salary and all that. I don't need a bank account.
exactly. And then I was going to mention that, for example, certain platforms like Coinbase and so forth allow you to take those stable coins, lock it up, and earn interest that's higher than many than the banks out there are offering, which is next to nothing in many regions.
I mean, but I mean, I spent a lot of time down in El Salvador, and I've mentioned this example before, but I don't know if people realize it. Some of these countries, they have 40%, 50% who don't have bank accounts, right? So what does that mean if you don't have a bank account? Have you ever thought about that, Tony? Let me give you an example.
Mm.
A family of two living an hour outside the city. They have a little shack with a little metal roof and what have you. Two things they have. They have a little wire with electricity, and then they have a phone. They all have phones.
Mm.
You know how they pay their electricity bill every month? Dad gets on the bus, drives an hour into the city, stands in line, pays with cash while mom goes to the market. That's not efficient. It's not safe. It's crazy. Now, if they can get some coins on their phone and the electricity company accepts it, they can pay that bill and save that hour, and he can walk with his wife to the market to make sure she doesn't get robbed or other things, right? I mean, that's the change in daily lives that this technology, just like in Africa, they skipped the fixed landline and went directly to mobile. I think they're going to skip the banks.
Mm. Wow. I can certainly see that happening because they're not. I was talking about it. They're not stuck in the infrastructure that's like a giant ship that's hard to steer, right? And takes forever to change. They're starting from a place where we have needs, and this solves the issues, and we could jump straight to it. The infrastructure is there because of the mobile phone or smartphone, so it's pretty incredible. The adoption rate will be way faster.
Of course.
Now, recently, Rocketfuel partnered with Ripple. Tell us about that partnership, how that came about, and what are the next steps there?
Well, Ripple is based here in San Francisco, where I am, and we've been following them for a long time, and they share our vision about using technology to move money from A to B. And I also commend them for being pretty pragmatic. I feel I'm pragmatic in that this is not a religion. This is technology to make things more efficient, and things are not going to happen overnight. And so they believe in blockchain and all of that, but they also realize that the majority of payments right now or money movements is still happening with fiat. And so we're using them in some of our products, and we are looking at expanding, right? Because right now what they're doing is they're making it really fast, efficient, and inexpensive to move fiat from one country to another. It seems simple, right? Most people think, oh, I want to move money from one country to the other, call up my bank and do a wire. It's not that simple. Right. And they are solving this using pretty advanced technology underneath it. And we can use that in all our payment products. On our pay-in product, I can settle to my merchants all around the globe super efficiently. On our pay-out product, where we need to pay all these people around the world, I can use their rails, right? They have their XRP ledger. They have a blockchain. And so if I wanted to, I have a couple of products coming up that need to store things directly on the blockchain. I could potentially use them for that. So there's a lot of synergies between our two companies where they provide the technology that we need.
I don't know if you can answer this, but on-demand liquidity product, are you using that in any way, or is that not really something that's relevant to what you're doing?
No, that is exactly what we're using it for, right?
Okay.
And that is, so I was down in Dubai and I was attending their Swell conference and gave a presentation on how we use that product, which allows us to move money super fast.
Mm.
And it's just important because some of our bigger merchants, it's liquidity for them. And if it takes 2, 3, 4 days to send money to Dubai, then and they can move it in an hour, that's better.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So what else is on your roadmap for 2024? What can we expect?
Well, we want to keep expanding our product suite. We believe that our customers, especially the big ones, they don't want to have a lot of point solution vendors. They don't want to have one for pay in, one for payout, one for B2B, cross-border, and so on. They want one integrated suite of products, just like Microsoft Office. And so we're expanding it with a rewards program and some other interesting things. So on the roadmap is continue to expand our product portfolio. And we do it because our target customer, they are medium to large customers. So we want to go back to them and say, we solved one problem for you or two problems with the pay in payout product. Now we have another product that use the same modern technology so we want to go back and sell more to them. That's that. And at the end of the day, from a business perspective, we want to just continue our growth. We are growing right now 2 to 3 times per quarter. And our goal is to process 300 million blockchain and crypto transactions next year. So if we can do that, and it's just a proof when people say, is blockchain and crypto really being used for payment transactions? We are in our first year of full operation, 450,000 payment transactions in 11 months. Someone's doing it, right? We have 122,000 individual shoppers who have made a payment using our technology with all our merchants. 122,000. And we're a small company.
Mm. Wow.
It's happening, Tony. It's happening. I know you know.
Oh, yeah. And my next question was going to be, and this is a hard question because it's, speculating a bit, when do you think we see, let's say we go to an Amazon or a Walmart, some of these big retailers, and you see that option to pay with stable coins or crypto? Do you think that's a few years away or 5 years away? What do you think on that?
Those big companies need to feel comfortable that your friend from the SEC doesn't come after them, right?
Yeah.
So they don't want to rock any boats, right? They're big companies. They, from a PR perspective, all that stuff. So that's one thing that needs to happen first. It's happening overseas. That's why we see more adoption over there. So that needs to happen. But assuming that, and I do see it's going this way, and we can talk about that, but it is going this way. But then the next thing we need is people to get more comfortable with and understand what crypto is. Most people today think that Bitcoin is crypto and it's volatile, it's dangerous and all that. Very few people know what a stable coin is and what a CBDC is, and that it takes away all those concerns and just makes their lives easier. That'll take time. Now, initiatives like PayPal's stablecoin being rolled out to 440 million users, that will definitely help. So to answer your question, it's going to take time. The regulation is important. We need some of the big players, also the ETFs that we talk about. We just need to get the word out there, educate the consumer base. I remember, and this is before your time, and I barely remember it, but when the ATM card was available and you could go into the little machine outside the bank and get cash out, my mom still for years would go into the bank. I don't know. And
right.
that's human nature, right?
Yes.
So we as the industry have an opportunity, and that is something we're working hard on, because how can we make it super easy? For example, when people make payments with our technology, they don't have to use a QR code. I'm sorry, my mom, my sister, using QR codes, copying addresses back and forth, it's got to be the Apple Pay experience, right? So we in the industry also have to improve it, and we will, and we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about the crypto market at large because it, related to what we're talking about with Gary Gensler and the SEC and so forth. When do you think in the United States we see comprehensive regulations?
I feel the pressures on them. I really feel. Let's see what happens in the election. That could change things. But I see even now, no, not even. I see both Democrats and Republicans on both sides, some of them getting it and understanding it, some of the younger people there. And that's a good sign. And I feel that what's happening with the SEC and Ripple and all of that, and the fact that the fact that PayPal is coming out with a stable coin and all of that. I feel that the tide is turning and the government is realizing that we can't stop technological progress, which, by the way, is why should we? We've always here in the US been the leader in pretty much all technology. 80% of all the high-tech companies are based in the US and many of them here in Silicon Valley. So I feel that, what I think they're doing is they're like, let's limit it to a few companies that we can work with. That's what they'll say. I'll say that they can control, but Coinbase, PayPal. So I think they're sitting down and saying, hey, guys, let's make a plan for how this is going to be. We want, and I don't blame them. We do want, as you've also pointed out, we don't want scammers. We don't want all the people who are doing all the bad stuff. So, and that's what the government is doing. I think they're overreaching a little bit, but I think that's what they want to do, right? And so they're sitting down with some of the bigger companies, and they just want control and insurance that everything is going according to plan. And that is why we're seeing the new Bitcoin ETFs and all of that.
Yeah, you're right. And I was actually just talking to Congressman French Hill, and he brought up exactly what you're saying. He's like, in order to make it the folks in the Senate and the rest of Congress to feel comfortable in getting on board with these crypto bills, we had to go settle with Binance. And I think there's something coming up with Tether. It's not that they want to kill it. They want to make sure that they can view what's happening and have their checks and balances in place with KYC and AML. So I get that perspective, right? They want to know that these things are in place before they go all in. But the tide is changing, right? And we're seeing, like you said, younger members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, jumping on board. I mean, just last night, the presidential debate, GOP, crypto came up as a topic. And it was pretty interesting to see the takes from the different candidates.
And I think also we as the industry, it's just like in politics, you have people all the way out on the left or the right, right? And we have that in the industry too. Let's face it. I get the whole idea with blockchain and decentralized and private and all that. But we live in a society that is based on a certain structure, including paying taxes for our roads and all that. You can like that or not. I'm not being political here. That's the reality. Sure. Therefore, if we want this technology to be rolled out in our society to the benefit of all of us, for the reasons we talked about, lower cost, more transparency, faster, better, cheaper, all that stuff, we need to accept that the government is going to provide some rules and a framework from within we can work. And so anything else, it's not going to happen, okay? So let's work with the government. Let's define the rules like we have in the financial sector.
Yeah.
Yes, and it happens with Uber in the beginning also. There weren't any rules, and it wasn't fair to the taxi drivers because they could pick up at the airport and didn't have to pay the $4 fee or whatever it was, right? Sure. Let's just make it an even playing field and let's go, because the biggest cost is not taking advantage of this technology and continue to pay 3, 4, 5% every time you go to the restaurant.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I want to circle back on CBDCs because those are coming, right? And there's a whole bunch of controversy around CBDCs because there's a lot of benefits, but there's also the risk, which a lot of people are worried about. And that is, some draconian government leader comes in and they have this lever they can pull, which can unleash a lot of problems and taking away people's privacies and so forth. We're not saying that's going to happen, but the potential for it to happen is there. The US is trying to figure this out. There's a lot of people putting out bills saying, hey, we don't want it to be this way. It has to be this way. So it aligns with the Constitution. Let's say they get it right and they get the digital dollar out in the market. The digital euro goes in the market. Will you be looking to, be able to support that, given that that's going to be flowing through the economy at some point?
Look, they are digital currency, whether it's called Bitcoin, XRP, PayC, USDC, whatever who cares? Yeah. It's a currency. It's a coin based on a blockchain. It's the freaking same thing. I'm sorry. Okay. Right. So from our point of view, we're just supporting whatever people have. I don't care if they have Bitcoin or one or the other. And so you're saying if they get it right. And so this is something that I've been thinking about. I've for a long time said, I think we're going to get a CBDC, and we may get that. But follow this thought experiment for a little bit. We have USDC, we have USDT, and we have the PayPal's. So we have 3 stable coins. They do the same thing, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So instead of the US government, when was the US government really good at running some big high technology system and run a business? Never, right? And that's not what governments are good at. They're better at doing regulation. And so look at the financial sector. How many commercial banks is the US government running? 0. They decided to outsource the banking system to the private sector. But they said, I'm going to put the framework. I'm going to protect the users, the customers, all that stuff. And so they said, our policy is not to run it ourselves, make the regulations, and let the banks, private companies run it. What if, and this is what I'm thinking, I mean, USDC, USDT, people are using it every day. It's being integrated to payroll systems and all sorts of systems. So if they wait another 3, 4, 5 years, whenever it comes out, people are going to be, why should I integrate this to SAP? As long as you feel comfortable with these. So the alternative to a CBDC for some countries could be to say, there are already 3. I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that PayPal got that one, right? They're a big, established, trusted company. And if you have, and I can imagine other companies coming out with, you have Circle.
Sure.
If they are really doing well and there's regulation and there's clear transparency as to the reserves and all that,
right?
Maybe that's good enough. Maybe we could just do what we did in the banking sector. Maybe the US government doesn't need a CBDC. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not saying it's going to go one way or the other.
Oh, sure.
But it has changed my view a little bit.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. And the fact that USDC Circle, as an example, is a regulated financial entity in the United States. Yeah. They already have a lot of checks and balances in place and audits and so forth. And if they use U.S. Treasury bonds, whatever it is, as a reserves, and the U.S. government can see that, via audits or whatever it is, then that could be a great solution.
They will argue. People will argue, well, no, but it has to be backed by the U.S. government, because what if they don't have enough reserves? What happened to Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic? Exactly the same problem, right? Yeah. Even though they did regulation. So the point is, just make the regulation, let the private companies run it. Might be a good solution.
All right, I got some wrap-up questions here for you. First, if you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on metaverse, but I always say, again, there's all the cool things, but it needs to add value, solve a problem. I'm a business guy, and the best I can come up with is real estate, real estate sales and all of that. But it's not that innovative. There are probably others, but yeah, that's where I see a lot of opportunity. If you tie it all together, that process of identifying and finding a home and driving around every Saturday and Sunday, and then dealing with the paperwork afterwards and agents. And again, we have a system. Credit cards cost 3, 4, 5% to pay with, that you and I pay. it costs 5 to 6% to buy and sell a house plus other fees, right? In Europe, it's about 1 to 2%. So we're paying 4 to 5% more than other countries because of how it is. Same with healthcare, by the way, right? So again, I'm just looking at, we have an old, inefficient industry. We have new technology that we can apply to everybody's benefit.
Yeah. I got some rapid fire questions here for you. First is favorite food.
Oh, it's got to be Mexican. I was just in Mexico with this past weekend.
Oh, nice. Favorite musician or band?
I must admit, I didn't listen to it so much when I was younger, but I've come to like Fleetwood Mac quite a
Oh,
lot.
yeah. Favorite movie?
I don't watch a lot of movies, but the one that keeps coming to my mind is A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga because of I don't know, there's something about her and her voice and how it was all combined. The story, fantastic talent. It moved me.
Yeah, that's a good movie. Favorite book?
I because of you, I don't read many books anymore. So I would say my favorite podcast is yours. No, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. I haven't read a book in a long time. I feel bad about saying it, but it's the truth.
You know, it's funny, Peter, I was thinking about that the other day because I also have not been reading as much, but I've been listening to podcasts. But then it dawned on me, books are just ideas and thoughts, right? And stories.
Mhm.
Podcast, that's what podcasting is. You're listening to people who have knowledge on certain things, whatever it may be, and you're intaking that. Yes, it's not exactly like a book that's telling a very detailed story, but that's the way knowledge is being spread now. So I think we are reading in a sense, but in a different format.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
a
if you agree
different
with
way.
me.
And I read I mean, I have podcasts not just on business, but all sorts of things,
Yes.
relationship and how
Yeah.
can you improve I mean, those are the books I would read in the past. Like, how can
Right.
I improve my relationship with my uh, partner and all of that? Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. It's just as what you're saying. I also like I'm listening to tech or culture or philosophy, whatever it is, right? And those many times are like over an hour podcast and just deep dives into different topics. So it's like a
Yeah.
book. So I feel that's a way we're gaining knowledge now. I don't know. There's an evolution. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and when you're not working at Rocketfuel, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
I took up sailing 3 years ago. So I live here outside of San Francisco in Sausalito, beautiful place to go
Oh,
sailing. So that's fun. I like skiing in the winter and yeah, just outdoor life here, cycle a lot.
I am jealous because sailing is on my bucket list. I need to move somewhere though where there's, like off the coast of California or something or Florida and learn how to sail.
Tony, call me when you're in San Francisco next time.
Definitely. Well, Peter, absolutely a pleasure chatting with you. I'm excited for the future updates of Rocket Fuel. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much.